In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, you are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm Kat.
And I'm Maddy.
And I'm Bridgett.
And we'd like to welcome you to our In the Lobby series, which is one of our newest series of weekly discussions. And today we are talking about the month of love, Valentine's Day, and romantic comedies. So specifically, how to address, engage, and watch for edification romantic comedies. So we usually always ask our guests, what's your favorite movie? So for this month, we're going to say, Maddy, what's your favorite romantic comedy?
Oh, man. And we should have started off with that rom-coms, it seems from all of us, we started talking right before we hit record, is one of our favorite genres. And I say that, and I still do like some romantic comedies, so it's hard to pick, for me especially, it's hard to pick just a favorite of anything, but I tend to like older movies, so the first things that sprung to mind was something like The Philadelphia Story or It Happened One Night, which are really old. Like It Happened One Night is from like the 30s, okay, and The Philadelphia Story is from the 40s. But I think a staple that everyone likes is My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Like that's a favorite, definitely.
Bridgett?
Oh, this is a tough one. First of all, It Happened One Night is just one of the greatest movies ever made. So
thank you. Yeah, see,
it is fantastic. So I think maybe if we can qualify, I don't know how many people would agree with me if we could qualify The Princess Bride as a romantic comedy. And I feel like maybe that
I saw it on some lists, but not on others. It's hard. I think I could do it.
Genreification too, I think. So if we can count it, I would go with that. If we're not counting that, I might have to go with While You Were Sleeping. I just adore that movie, so I might put that on my list.
I mean, Princess Bride is definitely a romance.
Yeah.
Right? So we are veering toward the calm portion of Rome rather than Rome dram.
Right.
But obviously, I mean, we're going to be dealing with the topic of romance and love and what that looks like and how the movies shake out or measure up to biblical standards. So I think The Princess Bride is definitely in there. There are many, many people who would love to be in a relationship like that. So I think I am a fan of While You Were Sleeping as well. But for me, one of my go-tos is Return to Me.
Actually, that one is really good.
It's so sweet. And it's kind of one of those movies too, like Up, where the first 10 minutes sort of wrecks you and then you kind of move into something a little sweeter and funnier as it goes. So yeah.
And then it wrecks you again.
And then it kind of wrecks you again.
That's what we love. We like to be wrecked.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, if I'm gonna invest in a romantic comedy, there better be some
cry,
catharsis, as we deal with a little bit later. We're going to talk about the catharsis that romantic comedies often provide. So excuse me. But yeah.
Absolutely.
So moving on, I guess we should let you know that during this series, those episodes will be dropping weekly throughout February. So keep coming back to see how if we find any romantic comedies that we actually like.
With a good
That's
message.
not true. That's a little harsh. That's a little harsh.
We like them, but do they have a good message?
There you go. There you go. So while this first episode is free to the public, the rest of the series is part of exclusive content for our patron saints, whose support we greatly, greatly appreciate. So please share this episode far and wide. And then to hear the rest, you can visit patreon.com/popcorntheology to become a patron saint. The premium seating tier gets you exclusive access to the entire In the Lobby catalog, as well as a members-only Facebook group and Discord channel. And it even allows you to vote on episodes once a month. So you can actually have some sway in which movies we watch. Or if you're just utterly horrified at the way that we disseminate the romantic comedies this month, you can tell us, no, you need to watch this one. So feel free to do that. And there's some fantastic content on the In the Lobby stuff. There's just recently they did an interview with Shane Rosenthal from the Humble Skeptic podcast. That's been really, really encouraging to me listening to that. The In the Lobby episode, as well as then moving over to his podcast and enjoying what he had to offer. So it's some great, great content. So please enjoy, join us, and join in the conversation. So moving along, part of the idea of this was, again, it's Valentine's Day is coming up, and the month of February is often soaked in lerv, as you would. And the some of the ideas that we had regarding the movies and the way that we engage them is, how do they measure up to biblical standards? And so specifically looking at love, your biblical character, your understanding of what you should be expecting in a relationship. So we kind of wanted to sort of look at romantic comedies and some other romance movies through some of those lenses. So the idea of biblical love versus cinematic love, and how do they measure up, whether your character in a movie is exemplary or not, and how does that measure up, and then how do you righteously judge a character or what you should be looking for in a partner. Also the idea of just what is romance versus a romanticism that's often portrayed in romantic comedies that is, I think, somewhat detrimental. And then the idea even of catharsis versus catechism. What are we allowing to be our guide as we watch these movies and take in the stories that they're telling? So we're going to kind of look at romantic comedies through some of those lenses. And so to start, do you guys have any specific tropes that when someone says romantic comedy, you immediately go, oh, that?
Yeah. I mean, usually I always feel like most of the time it's like a reiteration of Pride and Prejudice, except not as good, where it's like a girl and guy meet each other, they hate each other, funny things ensue, and then by the end they love each other.
Shenanigans.
So shenanigans.
Yeah, I think we have some of those storytelling tropes that so often come up in romantic comedy. So we have the enemies to lovers, we have the friends to lovers. That one sometimes, same kind of thing. It's the guy who's too afraid to tell the best friend girl that he's always loved her, or the girl telling the guy or whatever. So I think those two tropes are two of the most common that we see in the storytelling. I think for me, I often assume, and I'm sure our conversation is going to get us here, that when I'm going to watch a romantic comedy, I'm going to see a movie that will glorify attraction and lust over actual love. I have very, very low expectations that I'll ever see a relationship that actually depicts love in any kind of way that I think love should be depicted. So it's kind of a sad state of our cinematic endeavors that we can never quite seem to get there. But some do. I don't want to come down on the entire genre, but it does seem to be rare
diamond.
The rule. So yeah,
sure. And a lot of them seem to do that sort of love at first sight idea, right? You see someone across the room and there's some sort of kismet and lightning strike that is the one. They're the one. And while that can happen and that could work, they tend to see, my estimation of him is that they tend to solely view that as the identifying factor rather than actual character or actual like just the way that they treat each other. Like you were saying, the kind of enemies thing where they fight all the time, and somehow that's supposed to be passion, when in reality it's borderline abuse, manipulation, deceit, and then somehow that's translated into love at the end. And so I would argue that, generally speaking, what we see in the movies and cinema is not actually what is love, what actual love is, even just the biblical idea of love. I think that many people seem to view love as a feeling that can come and go. It can overwhelm you. And then, love makes you do crazy things. And it can then leave. Right. I mean, how many movies then are the opposite of the romantic comedy, where it's we've fallen out of love. And so now, to maintain our happiness and whatever, we move on from that. Whereas there's a quote from an old movie called Love Story, mind you, that it literally says, love means never having to say you're sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And
so true. No. Don't listen to that.
And then even in the movie Meet Joe Black, which isn't necessarily a romantic comedy, but it said love is passion, obsession, someone you can't live without. If you don't start with that, what are you going to end up with? And I think that those two quotes actually encapsulate many of the problems I see with the romantic comedy genre. That is the general understanding of what love is. Love means someone who knows me so well that we vibe, we sync, and we never have to apologize to each other because we never do anything wrong. Or, well, if you don't have that spark, that passion, that obsession, if it doesn't start that way, you don't have anything. And I feel that is a gross misunderstanding of love.
And a lie. not everyone's love is like that.
Or a straight up lie. So you actually see a lot of that in a variety of movies, right? Like you were saying, the enemies fight, right? Sweet Home Alabama, Much Ado About Nothing, The Proposal. I'm trying to think. I will admit I'm a bit stuck in the 90s, maybe early 2000s with some of the references, because I don't watch a ton of them. It's true. But
I just watched a recent one, Fly Me to the Moon, kind of same concept. Enemies to lovers.
All right. Did you enjoy it at all?
It was all right. It was actually a pretty good one for what it was. It was Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson, and I like both of those actors pretty well, and so it was all centered around the moon launching.
Oh, very cool.
So it was kind of like fun to watch historically, and it had I think a pretty good message, not too terrible. So
nice. All right. I mean, and sometimes
not too terrible.
Not too terrible.
Not too terrible.
Well, and I can appreciate that sometimes that animosity can be based on perceived slights or actual slights, and then if you're able to move past and repent and forgive those slights, you can actually see that the person is willing to mature and grow. And so you can have a story that starts that way with misunderstandings and hurts that turns into a better relationship, for sure. But most romantic comedies seem to that's where they start, that's where they stay, and then suddenly they say, oh no, that was love. And I mean, I think we see the movies tend to say, oh, fire and passion, but what you're actually seeing, if you pick apart the actual actions of the characters, is you see dishonesty, you see cruelty, jealousy, and honestly contempt for each other, and then somehow that is supposed to be translated into love. And I feel it does a disservice to what love actually is, but it also just sets us up for the wrong expectations and the wrong understanding of going into a relationship and what you should expect to receive from your partner and what you should expect to have to give for your partner. And so it can do a fair amount of damage. Sweet Home Alabama, where he supposedly truly loves her, but he won't communicate with her like an adult and actually explain the reason that I'm hedging and not doing what you want is because I still have these kind of confusing feelings for you. And he finally does confess that at the end, but it takes forever to get there. And there's other tropes. I think the big romantic gesture that overshadows everything else that the person has done. They've treated you horribly. They've lied to you. They've deceived you. And yet at the end, they do this big romantic gesture and all is forgiven. It's frustrating to me that that's what the movies say is love. And it even then twists the idea of forgiveness and grace in a way that I think can be problematic. I remember an old, so I will date myself here. We used to listen to a radio show called Loveline way back in the day with Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla. And they talked about the fact that most movie relationships are actually dysfunctional relationships. They're not healthy at all. They're not remotely reasonable or promoting anyone's well-being. And the movie promotes that as fire and passion and what the relationship should be, when in actuality, what you're seeing is dysfunction. But then they would get so many callers in talking about their relationships. And they were basically saying, you're modeling your relationship after these movies. You think that that's passion. You think that that's fire and that, but it's not sustainable. It's not reasonable, and it's not healthy. And I even just found a new a YouTube channel called, I've totally forgotten what the name of it is. I do apologize to the gentleman. I will come up with it later. I want to say it was like Cinema Therapy.
I was gonna say, is this cinema therapy? Because he does this a lot, to where he analyzes like rom-coms and like why they're unhealthy relationships. It's a good channel.
It's a great channel, and it's a really interesting take on it, where they actually have a therapist talking about that, and he reiterated some of those things that I had heard many, many years ago from Dr. Drew. That idea again that many relationships start with the dysfunction, never actually work on the dysfunction, and then just suddenly flip a switch and say, oh, they're in love now and everything's going to be great. And it actually ends where the healthy part of the relationships is starting. So definite shout out to Cinema Therapy. I've greatly enjoyed some of their insights into movies, that nature. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Do you guys recognize that in some of the rom-coms that you've seen? Where do you think that falls short? Are there any particular ways that you might show that against a biblical standard?
I think you kind of hit it on the head. A simple way of putting it, I think, is chemistry does not equal love, but that's what most romantic comedies would like to tell us, is that chemistry is love. But it's not. Chemistry is not love. And most rom-coms just don't take the idea of like selfless love seriously. And, when you're thinking of passages like the 1 Corinthians 13 passage, love is patient, love is kind, it's, it's humble, it's enduring. It's not, in that list, there is not, passionate, but it can be, like, if you read Song of Solomon, obviously, like, there is a passion to love, but, like, that's not, like, the main thing. Like, there's a whole list of things it should be, and most of the things in romantic comedies are not on that list. So, like you said, big romantic gestures and just, like, overlooking major, like, character flaws, not just like flaws that can be overcome, but like you said, like, there's a lot of like lying and manipulation in these, it seems like, and hiding who you are. But then, like, once you reveal who you are, it's just accepted rather than fixed, which is, again, like I said earlier, it's like a bad redoing of Pride and Prejudice, because in Pride and Prejudice, they better each other. They realize what their mistakes were and are humble enough to accept correction from the other person both ways. But in most romantic comedies, it's like, oh, this is my flaw. Well, you're just going to have to accept me for who I am.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you're a terrible person. I don't think you should accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
I think a lot of movies even take that one step further, where they validate the flaws and say,
Yeah.
you often hear people. I remember, so this maybe is awful of me to say, I enjoy the occasional Hallmark movie at Christmas time because they're good. They're not good, but because it's Christmas. So you watch Hallmark movies.
I get it. I get it.
But I remember watching, like, there was one that was on this past Christmas, and there's a couple who are getting engaged, and the man, as he's proposing, is listing all of the reasons why the woman should not want to marry him. And I'm like, yeah, you actually make a really good case against yourself. The woman
Maybe
is
we
like,
should-
oh, it's your flaws that make you perfect, like all, and like that whole,
Yeah, that's a trope.
no, we put our stamp of approval on it, and there's no attempt to correct. It almost becomes like it's all about self-love. Like you said, Maddy, that Hollywood doesn't want to glorify the selflessness that comes with real love, the work that has to go into maintaining a relationship. And I think we live in a society now where we don't want to even admit that we have flaws, or that our flaws are just part of who we are and we can't change them. And it's just adorable that I am the way I am. When what really should be happening is it should be iron sharpening iron. And it should be actually, those are all things that make you a sinner. And this is so, like, let's come together now as two sinners and propel each other on our journey with Christ. Obviously, Hollywood's never going to get there, but what we see is these depictions of this passionate love, where I guess we're supposed to believe that just the passion will sustain itself just because it was right there at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is no emotion at all ever is sustainable for the rest of forever. So the feeling is going to come and go. And that's, I think, that quote, Kat, that you started with from Meet Joe Black. If you don't start with that, what are you going to end up with? My question actually would be, if you do start with that, what are you going to end up with? Because when passion goes away, when the obsession level fades, what are you left with? Are you still two people who are working to maintain the love in your relationship? Are you acting selflessly in the best interest of the other?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you saying, okay, the passion is gone, so now that means the relationship is over? And that's where societally we go into marriage with the expectation that we'll probably get divorced. Like that's just where we are. So, I just, sorry, that was just kind of a rant but I think that's good where we're not, Hollywood cannot meet the biblical expectations, because when you make it all about the feeling, there is nowhere for the relationship to go. And if you are affirming flaws in people instead of trying to work on those things and make and compel the other person to get better, then the relationship can't really develop from there.
Yeah, and I think that fundamental misunderstanding of what love is just that foundational problem, right? If your foundation is passion, obsession, and honestly, the dopamine hit that you're getting from that initial, like, oh, it's the fun relationship we've just started together, like that will fade. They've done studies that show that fades in like 2 to 3 years. And if you don't have anything other than that holding you together, what will you end up with? I think that's a great question. And so that was part of why I wanted to look at kind of how the Bible defines love versus how the movies define love. Because if you can start with that biblical foundation of love, you have a much better foundation to walk forward into any relationship that you're looking at. And what's fascinating to me is many people talk about love as being, it's this overwhelming feeling, it's this emotion, it's this this wave of affection that warms your heart and makes you super excited. And that what's beautiful is that can all be there. But if that's solely your foundation, it's sand. Mm-hmm. Whereas biblical love talks about endurance and sacrifice and edification, like all the things you guys have been referencing, humility and perseverance. You'll see that biblical love is efficacious, like what you were speaking to, Bridgett, the idea that it speaks to in Galatians 2. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. That idea that Christ's love and his sacrifice pulls us up out of ourselves. It changes our heart of stone to a heart of flesh. It changes our outlook, and it no longer condemns us in our sin, but calls us to repentance from our sin and allows us to move forward in a way that isn't solely self-centered. But I'd also like to point out, love in the Bible is also, it's a commandment.
Mm-hmm.
Deuteronomy 30:16 says, "For I command you this day to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and keep his commands and decrees." And so if it's commanded, then it's something that we can and should do. And that means if it's commanded as well, you can control yourself and choose to follow that command, which means, much like in Joshua 23, it says, "Be very careful to love the Lord your God." That again, like I can maintain it. Even in Hosea 12, it says maintain love and justice and wait for God always. So it's not just something that overwhelms me, that I can't control, that I have no influence over, and I just have to ride the wave in whatever direction it's pointing me, even if it's toward a bad relationship or someone who's unhealthy for me, or someone who would cause me to behave in a manner that's inappropriate. I can, with the help of the Holy Spirit, control myself and say, I will not go in that way. And then I think a huge misunderstanding as well is the idea of a covenantal love versus contractual love. I think a lot of relationships, like you were saying, Bridgett, the state of things currently, we enter into a relationship prepared for it to fall apart, right? We enter into a relationship with basically a contractual understanding. As long as you do these things for me, I will do these things for you. And if at any point either one of us doesn't feel like doing it anymore, we can break the contract, pay some fines, maybe have a little bit of emotional collateral damage, but we can walk away and it's not a moral issue. It's not a problem. Yeah. And the Bible doesn't talk about love like that at all.
No.
The Bible speaks of covenantal love. In Nehemiah, it says, "O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keeps his commandments." So are you guys familiar with the differences between covenant and contractual love? Do you have any pithy ways of kind of explaining the differences between that? It's kind of a tricky concept.
Yeah. I think my pastor explained it in a way where it was like, in a covenant, it's God making the promise and he's perfect, so he's going to keep it perfectly and you don't have to worry. But, in a contractual human contract, either party can break it because we're both sinful. But the fact that God is so different from us makes all the difference.
Yes. Amen.
Amen. I've also read the idea that if a person breaches a contract, like I said, you can kind of pay the penalties. But a covenant is, if someone breaks a covenant, that is an absolute moral failing and a breach of trust, which is why God will never break his covenant with us. No matter if we break our portion of the covenant, he doesn't. And that's what we're supposed to be aiming for in our romantic relationships, is that style of love and understanding of what we're entering into. You'll also see in scripture that love is directable. Psalm 42 says, "By day the Lord directs his love. God sends his love." It's an active action thing. It's not just a feeling. Like, to love someone is it's a verb, right? Like, I love the Lord by obeying his commandments. I love the Lord by worshiping him. I love the Lord by following in his footsteps and trying to be more conformed to his image. And so how does that play out then in a romantic relationship? And how do those understandings of love change our foundation in what we're looking for in our romantic relationships, and even sometimes our friendship relationships, but specifically since we're speaking about rom-coms, how do you think that some of those understandings would change the way that people behave in those movies, or would maybe change the fundamental foundation that they're standing on?
That's a great question. I think I don't know. I grew up with DC talk, so I don't know if that means that either of you. But Kat, it's funny that you just talked about love being a verb, because through this whole conversation, I was thinking about the DC talk song, "Love is a Verb." It's a great song. And when I was a kid listening to that song, it didn't really mean anything. I didn't understand. But now as an adult, I think talk about a pithy way to make love understandable. If you're placing your hope in the feeling of love, the feeling of romance and the passion and the fire, shifting sand, it comes and it goes, just like every other feeling that we have. But love is really going to be defined by action and by self-sacrifice. It can't even just be the words that you speak, because you can say words without meaning them. Mm-hmm. So you show love through action. That's really all I think that's left as a means of expressing love. And there is no greater love than this, that, we see the greatest example of love in what Jesus Christ came to this earth to do for us. So we have an example of self-sacrificial love to try to live up to. And the Bible even commands, husbands, love your wives the way that Christ loved the church. So I think the way that I think should be looking for this to play out in romantic relationships is, first of all, I think this is part of why it's so important for Christians not to be unequally yoked. You cannot have if you are a Christian, you cannot have a proper view of love. You cannot be in a covenantal marriage with someone who does not believe the same things that you believe about what marriage is even supposed to look like. So what should you be looking for? I guess, well, from the female perspective, you want a man who is following Christ, and who is committed to loving his wife through walking on this journey, pointing her towards Christ. I think it's very important for both partners to realize that their love for each other and their marriage with each other is not the end game. That's not even what it's all about. It's about edifying one another as both grow in their relationship with Christ as well. And then, if there are children, raising the children that way too. So yeah, having a proper understanding of who God is, what he has done for us, sending Christ, his son, to die for us, changes everything about your understanding of love, and keeping our own selves in the proper context as well. Marriage is always going to be a relationship between two sinners. So what does that mean? What does that look like? But you can't keep that in its proper context if you aren't both understanding who Christ is, what he has done, who you both are as sinners, and then how that defines the self-sacrificial nature of your relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. I think that actually can spur us on to kind of the next idea of how you look at romantic comedies and some of the things that don't measure up or how they do. And that's that idea of the characters versus actual character. Right. And so many movies I see seem to try and actually sort of separate action from character. So I like that you were saying, like you can't have that love without some kind of action being part of it, right? Love is a verb. So do my actions match my words?
Yeah.
I say I love you, but I cheat on you. I say that I love you, but I treat you poorly. I mean, scripture talks about that. If you don't even provide for your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. Well, what does that look like in a romantic relationship? I see so many where like the script seems to want us to think that the actions and the characters match, but they don't. Yeah. I remember Made in Manhattan with J-Lo, right?
Yep.
There's this moment when she's finally revealed that she was the maid, and she basically says, like, I'm a good person, but I did all these things. And I was in the theater like, but you're not, you're a liar and a thief. And, you know, I remember another friend, even going farther back than not necessarily a romantic comedy, but the movie The English Patient was a big one where it's this sweeping romance that wants you to want these two people to get together. And my friend at the time was practically frothing at the mouth. She was so mad. She's like, they're married to other people. They're not going to glorify adultery, right? No. They belong together. Never mind those pesky marriage vows.
There's another J-Lo movie that I just thought of, and it is one that I grew up watching, and I like it, but The Wedding Planner, and it's the same thing where Matthew McConaughey is engaged, and she's their wedding planner, and they're going around flirting, going on dates, and I'm like, oh, like, they're so cute together, but like, that's such a terrible, terrible message, like, that you would flirt with a man who you're planning his wedding, and you're working with his fiance. Like, that's really bad behavior, really. But it's played off as they're in love, so it doesn't matter. And that's the thing. It's like, as long as you're in love, it covers all sins. And that's terrible advice.
Until you're the one that he leaves for somebody else because he falls in love with somebody else. You know, like, these girls, we set ourselves up for failure sometimes when all we want is the romance.
Yeah. I remember my best friend's wedding. Right?
Yeah.
Like, she finds out that he is getting married, and suddenly she just has to have him. And I felt like, you're a toddler that just suddenly, oh, somebody else is playing with my toy. Now I need it.
Yeah. That movie bugged me so much that everyone like loves that movie, and I'm like, she's a terrible person. Like, she's ruining her best friend's wedding just because they made a silly pact years ago that doesn't even matter anymore. And
which he found someone else. So he was marrying someone else. And that it's not, the movie tries to say that that's love, right? But I would argue that that's
jealousy.
That's jealousy or lust. Just, I want that thing.
I want him. Yeah.
I want him.
One thing I do appreciate about that movie is that sometimes I think it's the low-hanging fruit to make the competition, like the other guy or the other girl, a terrible person, so that it's a much starker choice for the character who has to make the choice. What I like about My Best Friend's Wedding is that Kimmy is actually really great, and she's really and like great match for Michael. So it's the jealousy of Julia Roberts' character coming in and wanting to steal him back for herself, but she's also trying to steal him from somebody who's actually really good for him and somebody who is complimenting him probably better than she could herself. So I kind of like that. I guess. I don't think that movie actually glorifies what Julia Roberts is trying.
I would agree.
Yeah. And by the end, I think it actually comes down on her choices a little bit, even in having Michael choose Kimmy and still get next to her by the end of that movie. So
yes, so that is one where it ends the right way, right? Yeah. I would make that absolute same argument. I would say yes, it does actually end the right way, but there's so many others where that.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is the rare one, weirdly enough. But but that idea of suddenly I have to have it, and the movie makes it feel like that's love.
Yeah.
And then, at least at the beginning, and there's many movies that don't have that ending, where the person does get they come in and they manage to pull the people apart. Like, that's a huge trope. Someone is with someone that's actually good for them. It's a healthy relationship, and this person from their past, this other person shows up, there's some kismet moment, and they leave someone who is, and I mean this in the best possible way, this is going to sound banal, but they leave someone who's perfectly acceptable.
Right.
In fact, a good match, quite good for them. There's nothing wrong with them.
And Kat, that's every Hallmark movie. Person.
Yeah, and so it's such a frustrating idea in a lot of these movies. They meant, like, your motivation is all that matters, not your actual actions. Well, I didn't mean to do anything wrong. I didn't mean to break up this thing or cause this chaos, and I'm a good person. I just happen to, lie and manipulate and deceive you about who I really am or what I really want. The movie Hitch, right? his whole thing is playing games, trying to work the system, playing games with people. And you're trying to trick that person into falling in love with you. That also is not love. Love based on a falsehood, that foundation of falsehood. Now, even Groundhog Day, which I do adore, mind you, I do adore Groundhog Day. He tries to manufacture the connections with her, right? Like, he's reliving the same day, and he's trying to manufacture these connections with Andy McDowell, where he's like, okay, right, no white chocolate, no fudge. Okay, next day, I know what to do now. And what's really great about that one is they don't work. Like, those fake connections don't actually play out for him. But that's what a lot of people try to do. I want to know just enough about you to get you on the hook, but not actually have care for you as a person, really get to know who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your likes, your needs, and how you can complement me. There's so many movies where the characters portray themselves as something other than what they are. We mentioned Made in Manhattan. Never Been Kissed. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
And so again, it's based on falsehood and deceit. And then, oh my goodness, so many rom-coms romanticize cheating. Again, that you're in a relationship and then you break it off for something else. And I just get, sorry, my dog made a horrible noise.
Okay.
So, but that idea of the difference between what you present your character to be and what your character actually is something that I think a lot of people struggle with in life. How can you separate your action from your character? And I don't believe that biblically you can. Do you guys agree with that? Do you have some ideas or movies where you'd be like, yeah, this one says it or does it better, worse?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we all have things that we've done that we can regret and whatever, and that's not saying that we can never be redeemed. So, like, I don't want to go into the idea of, like, if you do this thing, then you're never going to be forgiven. You can, but only if you have the right heart attitude to repent about it and be forgiven by God and by your partner or whoever. But most of the time in these movies, that's not what's again, it's more of a just accept my flaws as a part of who I am, rather than I'm trying to work out these flaws. Like Kat had said earlier, we love God by obeying his commandments. So we're trying to work out those character flaws that we may have, but don't romanticize them like romantic comedies do. And I did think, while you were talking, I did think of Love Actually, which I had heard about that movie so many times, and it's like a holiday movie that everyone loves to watch, and I had never seen it until last year, so I finally watched it, and I was like, what a terrible film. Again, the one guy, Alan Rickman, cheats on his wife, and then the one guy, and then the one guy confesses to Keira Knightley, with the cardboard signs, the famous scene that he loves her even though she's married or engaged to his best friend. I can't remember which.
At that point, she's married.
Yeah, married to his best friend. Terrible. Again, and it's like you're just by doing that, you're trying to get the temptation of trying to get her with you. It's like you shouldn't have said anything. Don't say anything. don't say that.
Yeah, that is a movie. That's one that, like, I'll admit that I enjoy watching that movie, but that one definitely comes with a caveat of, like, be very careful when you watch that film, because there are so many different depictions of love stories and falling in love and what love looks like in that movie. And actually, it's
there
funny.
There are some more healthy than others.
Yes.
Absolutely. My favorite relationship in that movie is Jamie and Aurelia. I think that they are so cute, but it ends with the grand romantic gesture of him going all the way to her hometown to propose to her, and they both learned each other's languages and everything. So, but yeah, it is a very, very secular movie for sure. So proceed with caution on that one, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and I
I
think
to mention another thing too. I'd be so curious to get your thoughts on this from both of you. Back at the beginning, when all of us named our favorite romantic comedies, Maddy, you mentioned My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and Kat, you went with Return to Me, and I landed on While You Were Sleeping. Every single one of those movies has a family element in it. It's not just about the two people who are falling in love. There's a bigger, there's more at stake than just their own relationship. I wonder if that is part of maybe why we like those movies. And I think that fits here with this character discussion too, is there a place for, I think in America, especially, we are so individualistic. Like, it only matters if I love this person, and who cares what my family thinks. But maybe there is room in this discussion for, it should matter what your family thinks of your romantic partner, especially if you like the more serious the relationship gets. So, any thoughts on that? I'll pick a family-centered movie.
I totally agree, because I definitely had on my list of movies, rom-coms that I actually do enjoy, as another one, which is actually a pretty recent movie, was Crazy Rich Asians, believe it or not. I did not think I would like that movie. Like, I saw trailers for it, and I'm like, oh, this looks dumb, looks stupid. Watched it. It's fantastic. And it's kind of like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's not so much about, they don't have major character flaws. They're actually two people who are really well suited for each other. But his family is terrible, and she has to win them over, and or teach them a lesson, in a sense, because they're not being very nice or kind to her. And so it's a very big family values kind of movie, and how it's like American Asian versus Asian family. Even gets some like cultural like difference, again, like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. So I do enjoy those types, because again, it's not like they both have major red flags. They're actually decent people, but they're working through a problem together, and they're trying to figure out if they can make it together despite circumstances.
Yeah. And I think there's an interesting question in regards to even some of this character idea of how much should you be willing to change for an individual? Because I think that there are certain things that you could be willing to change, or know that you need to change, right? And not just in the edification of each other, iron sharpens iron, over time you're going to grow and mature and that sort of thing. But there are aspects of your character that you can be willing to change. But sometimes these movies have someone utterly like doing a 180 with their character that then presents problems later. And there's some cultural things like that in regards to family stuff that can be really tricky to navigate as well. Like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I think he actually converts to Greek Orthodox so that they can get married in a Greek Orthodox church, because that's a huge part of her culture, to appease her family. Now, one of the reasons that probably works is because he doesn't seem to be that religious of a guy. So for him, he's like, whatever, right? But as a Christian, that could set a dangerous precedent. Right.
Yep.
And you want to be very careful of, like you were saying, Bridgett, to not be unequally yoked in your understanding of that faith. If it's just a cultural thing that you can do, that's not a compromising of your morals or your faith, then some of those things you might be willing to bend, and that can be okay. But at the same time, then you have to be really careful which pieces are cultural, which pieces are more moral. But I think too, in a way that Proverbs talks about things, like having a lot of counsel around you, having good brothers and sisters that know you, and hopefully know the individual you're looking at. They'd be able to speak into those things. They'd be able to help you navigate. Oh, this is something you do a lot. You always find this guy who is a work in progress, and he corrupts your morals. And so I would advise against this particular individual, or maybe they'll see something that you don't see. And so having that counsel and those large families can be really, really insightful, provided your family is healthy and reasonable, and you would want to listen to their counsel. So we'll caveat that for sure. But absolutely, those big families that love and support each other, they can be a huge boon to a relationship, to help you kind of navigate or see something. Maybe they see red flags that you don't see. Maybe they see the green flags that you don't see. Those sorts of things can be hugely important. And I think that's what is really sweet about Return to Me. One of the things I really love is actually seeing her sister's family. She and John Belushi in that movie are married, and they're a hysterical couple, and they have like 6 kids, and it's obvious that they have great affection and knowledge of each other in a way that's really, really heartwarming. And then all of her friends, her old friends, are so adorable in that movie. So I think you're right, Bridgett. Sometimes, I mean, if you're in a healthy family, that can be a safeguard for your heart, and to help you to judge things rightly. Because we often see behavior versus your motivations. And I think considering the why of someone's behavior in, like, even some of these movies, okay, maybe they have some toxic traits, maybe they have some stuff that's going on, but then when you find out why, what's their past, where have they been harmed in the past, that sort of thing, there's places where you can absolutely offer grace to someone. So someone that might seem problematic at first blush, but you find out why their behavior is that way. And if they're willing to work on it, and not, as you were saying, Maddy, just like, well, you just got to accept me. What's that phrase? A lot of people are like, if you're not willing to deal with me at my worst, you don't get me at my best.
You don't deserve me at my best. Yeah.
And that's not what we're talking about at all. But if you find someone at a low ebb in their life, but you can see potential, but part of that potential is that they're humble and willing to grow and mature and work on these issues, then you can absolutely offer that sort of grace to them, and God can move and bloom something beautiful out of that. I mean, you do see that a lot. My problem is most of these movies don't show that sort of healthy conflict resolution, healthy actual understanding of your own inner workings in your heart. Excuse me. And so you have to be really careful then that you don't just excuse away what are actually toxic behavioral patterns.
Yes.
Right? Or an unrepentant attitude. And that's usually what you see, is someone's like, no, I just am this way. And if you want to be with me, you have to deal with it. I'm going to yell and scream occasionally. I'm going to be unreasonable. And that's just me. Rather than having any kind of desire to be like Philippians, where it says to think of others more highly than yourself, to be willing to sacrifice for the other person. So therein is my issue kind of with some of the character stuff that you see in romantic comedies, where they really do try to divorce what you do from what you say, and then who you are. I am a good person. And scripture doesn't say that. Scripture says, Romans 7, for I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh, for I have the desire to do what's right, but not the ability to carry it out. And so what's beautiful then about our faith is we aren't left there. And so if we can offer that grace in a relationship, it's a beautiful thing to see. But I find too that we often sort of romanticize those things. We look at someone's character and we excuse traits. We obfuscate certain things. Oh, they didn't mean to do it. You know, he gets this way, she gets that way. And we, like you were saying, Maddy, we that person is never called upon to grow out of that and become the better version of themselves that they could be. And I think that's another way that we fall into traps in some of these movies, is the way they present things. Is there's this idea of romance that everyone loves. Oh, he's romantic. He's romancing her. She's wooing him. Together, they're going to have this lovely feeling of excitement, mystery that's associated with love, right? That's a beautiful thing. But then often we romanticize toxic things to try and grasp onto that feeling of excitement and mystery. And so I would argue then there's this difference between what is romance and what is romanticism, and being able to judge rightly and wisely, one, the movies that we're watching, but two, then as we're looking toward your relationships, judging rightly and wisely your own heart in the relationship and the person that you're with. Have you experienced some of that in any of your friend groups or anything where someone's just like, I just love him and he's got to do whatever he wants, but I love him and I'll let him do whatever.
Yeah. All throughout high school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was me in high school for sure.
Yeah, that's all of my students in high school. I am struck in listening to you say this, Kat. I keep thinking about this idea that I think we romanticize the idea that there is one person out there that is your soulmate, and this is the only person that God put on the planet for you to find. Here's the thing, is that there's a little bit of a both and there, I think, in that when we insist that there's the one, we need to look for the one. That is what allows us to so easily leave a relationship, because this person just wasn't the one for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I tried this person and maybe we even got married and maybe we had a couple of kids, but it's just not working out. So obviously this person's not the one, and I have the right and I owe it to myself to keep looking for the one, right? It's all about me. Whereas I think what is closer to the truth is that there are many people potentially that you could be perfectly happy with on the planet. There are 7 billion people on this planet. Like there are a couple people out there for all of us that we could be in a very successful relationship with. The difference is the commitment. So I don't think that there is just the one, but when you commit to someone, you make that person the one. You stop looking. You don't continue to give yourself additional options. And I think that's what the world misses out on, is that somehow it's romantic to think like, oh, he's my soulmate. He's the one I've been waiting for. But what happens when he lets you down? What happens when you realize that he is a sinner just like you are, and that he's not perfect? Where do you go from there then? So, I don't know what you all think about that. I think that's one of the places where Hollywood gets romance completely wrong.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's spot on. I loved that. It's like you make them the one. They're working on it.
Yeah.
But I think, funnily enough, when we're talking about all these rom-coms, and most of them I feel like are 90s, early 2000s rom-coms, because that just was the era, like that's when we were talking about these, and it was
kind of
like even like Titanic, and like that kind of sweeping romantic gestures and stuff like that, and
in a lot of ways.
And the guys are perfect. And I actually almost feel like it's an opposite trend now, because I was just thinking about it as you were saying that, like, in a bunch of the rom-coms we're talking about, you don't see any of that. But I feel like lately there's actually been a trend where it's actually going the opposite of that, where the guys are so less than perfect and they're very macho and tough and nonverbal. And my parents just finished watching the last season of Yellowstone, and that character Rip, and people love him, and he's totally not romantic at all, like, and he calls the crap out when he sees it. And I was reading an article about The Witcher as well, that people really liked Henry Cavill as The Witcher, because same way, like, he's not a romantic person at all. He is just tell it like it is person, And so I just kind of wanted
borderline
to, like,
monosyllabic.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to see if you guys had noticed maybe anything recently that is maybe counteracting that, love from the early 2000s, to where maybe now we are getting a little more realistic in a sense of, like, maybe instead of ideal, like, romanticizing, maybe we're actually starting to not romanticize anymore. Maybe it's the opposite, where we want, like, the opposite of that.
Maybe, or maybe we're just romanticizing a different type of individual,
yeah.
right? Because you could argue that, okay, so the super tough, macho, monosyllabic guy still falls into the very poor communication skills.
Yeah.
Does he have any kind of conflict resolution skills other than just beating stuff up or walking away, right? And yet people romanticize that. We saw that with the Avengers, right, in 2012, where how many young women romanticized Loki?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of horrifying. Really, like, and kudos to Tom Hiddleston for turning in a fantastic performance, very nuanced performance that allowed you to go, well, maybe there is something underneath there. But a lot of people just went with, oh, he's just wounded puppy and I want to save him and fix him. And you're like, no, he is a horrific manipulator who committed genocide, who is, he's filled with vitriol and revenge, and he's so just everything that flows out of him is acid. Right?
Yeah.
There isn't a kind, selfless bone in his body. Everything that he does is solely for him. And honestly, I agree with Thor, perceived slights. He has this poisonous idea that he belongs on the throne, and yet a bunch of women were like, he's cute, therefore I will absolutely romanticize away all of his horrific traits, right? Well, he won't lie to me because we're going to be
we're going to be perfect.
He won't lie, and we do that. And to romanticize is to deal or describe in an idealized or unrealistic fashion. You make something more appealing than it really is. And we're so good at that with our own sin, right? We belittle, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But then we'll do it with our relationship partners, where we will absolutely put under the rug stuff that should not be under the rug, right? I appreciate and understand giving grace to someone in a relationship and working with them, encouraging them, helping them up when they stumble. It isn't an issue of you have to be perfect in a relationship, but is that person repentant and trying to change? Yeah. And so you're helping and encouraging them in their attempts to become more holy? Or are they just asking you to, as you said, just accept me as I am with my toxic trait, and that's what you get?
I think that's what like Hollywood is so good at. Like, I think honestly this is why women like romantic comedies and stuff like that, and big sweeping romances, because we are good at really romanticizing everything, even the bad things that we find, because I think we have an attitude of, I can fix it. I can fix them. Which isn't always a bad thing, but it is bad if you're, thinking your whole relationship is going to be based on you fixing that person. And he's not really a bad guy. Like, I can bring out the soft side of him, even with those big, tough macho men. Like, I could make them soft, And we have this notion that, like, and Hollywood plays off that. It's like they know that women like those types of stories, which is why they will keep making rom-coms.
Yeah. I mean,
there's a scene actually in While You Were Sleeping that speaks to this in, I think, a gentler way. But one of the times that Lucy goes to the hospital to visit Peter, she says to him that if you romanticize someone from afar and you have this crush on someone, but they don't know who you are, she kind of sets it up that way. And then she says, but if only that person really knew you and knew the real you. And she's so cute when she says it. She says they would, of course, the perfect model they're with and realize that you were the one that they wanted to get old with. And I think kudos to that movie that she realizes she's wrong because she didn't even want Peter by the time the movie's over. But yeah, we do. I think women especially have this fixer complex that we are so sure that we will be the woman that some guy decides he wants to completely change for. And I think we really, and again, you kind of hinted at this too, Kat, that may not necessarily be a terrible thing, but I think we have to be very careful that we don't make an idol out of becoming a fixer, because it really, that I don't think that and take it for what it's worth from a single gal, but I don't think that the role of a married woman should be to have to change and fix her husband. That's, no. You can be on that journey together, but if he needs that much fixing, then you probably shouldn't have married, then maybe
Probably
that's
not.
where you don't. So
Red
There's
flag.
probably some black mold under that carpet.
Yeah. And we have culturally, we have such a conversation about toxic masculinity, but is there space to have a conversation about toxic femininity too? I think we almost, gosh, how do I say this? That we almost try to get men to come too far in the direction that we want them to be. There has to be a middle ground there for healthy masculinity.
Absolutely.
We can't romanticize either extreme of, just accept me how I am and everything's going to be fine. And let's just talk about our feelings for forever. That would be toxic femininity. And then I think, Maddy, what you're talking about here is the actual toxic masculinity of, borderline, almost abusive sometimes, but now we're almost romanticizing that because I can be the one who changes him. No, look for a guy who's in a healthy place emotionally and communicatively, and maybe pursue that man instead of the crazy guys. So,
well, and I think that can come down to that idea of are you viewing something through the lens of I want romance, right? Or am I romanticizing away sinful patterns and behaviors that this person is not repentant of, not admittant to? And so you can see some of that in a movie like 500 Days of Summer, right? Where and they did a great job in that movie where they show you a relationship that's not working, but they show how, and in this case it was actually the man that had romanticized the relationship. And you see there's this great shot where they show both his idea of what's happening and what's really happening. And it was a really clever way that they did that. And then there's actually a quote at the end of it where she's not a super romantic person. She was kind of on the more casual side. She never really thought there'd be this one person that she'd fall in love in that kind of way for, but she talks about it at the end and she's like, there was this one guy, and she says, and Tom was right, which was this other gentleman, that there is someone for her. It just wasn't him. And so weirdly enough, like it's an odd little movie. But it has some clever, I think, kind of healthy things to say, but it also then shows how we can absolutely build up and romanticize away character flaws. So, and again, as we've said multiple times, like character flaws, we all have them. It's just a question of how you view them and what you want to do with those flaws.
Right.
Like in Sense and Sensibility, right? You have the two sisters, Eleanor being extremely pragmatic and going about, as she falls in love with Edward, in an extremely honorable way. And then when she discovers that he has a promise from old, she's heartbroken, but she doesn't flail about and make everyone suffer for it. She doesn't degrade him. In fact, she says, I hold him in greater esteem because he's a man of character who's going to stick to that promise, even though it now hurts us. But that's a man of character. What's he supposed to do? Throw over this other woman who has nowhere else to go? Who would serve him well as a wife just for feelings? Whereas her sister then throws all kinds of caution to the wind, presents herself in an extremely inappropriate way, for a man who ultimately is a scoundrel.
Yep.
And you see what's beautiful then about Sense and Sensibility is Marianne does learn from her sister, right? And I love the line at the end when she says something about her heartbreak, and Eleanor says, "You can't possibly compare, his behavior to yours." And she says, "No, I compare how I should have behaved to you."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's a beautiful portrait of what that kind of romanticizing, again, someone that you don't know, he's just really cute, he came in, he brought you flowers, but you don't know his back history. And his back history is he got some girl pregnant and left her destitute. Is that the man that you want to marry? Is that the character that you want to have?
Yeah.
And so I think, Maddy, you brought up some stuff, as we've spoken before, about Jane Austen and your great esteem
I mean,
for Jane Austen.
Yeah, I mean, nobody again, like nobody writes a romantic comedy like Jane Austen, because again, that like in Sense and Sensibility, it's like they actually learn something from it. Pride and Prejudice, same thing. Emma, same thing. Which Emma is really funny, and I like the new movie as well as the BBC version, as well as the old movie from the 90s that had the Emma Thompson in that one, or Gwyneth Paltrow. Thank you.
Yeah,
no, I'm thinking of Sense and Sensibility. I was thinking of Sense and Sensibility. Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow. Actually, that one, I guess that I didn't like that one as much, but I do really love the BBC version of Emma. But it's the same thing. Like, she thinks, and that one, that time it's it's the woman who thinks she's got it all figured out and she knows what she's doing, and but Mr. Knightley has to come on and teach her a lesson, which I guess feminists probably wouldn't really like nowadays. Man teaching a woman a lesson, how dare he? But that's probably the problem with a lot of that's the problem with a lot of the modern movies, is that nobody's learning a lesson because we are too afraid to teach somebody a lesson, because it's just, again, just accept me for who I am. But Mr. Knightley, badly done, Emma, badly done.
Love that scene so much.
I know.
Well,
because he cares. He cares about her enough to say that. And that's what love is. Like, you care enough to tell them when they're wrong.
Well, and the Bible actually speaks to that as well. The Lord disciplines those he loves, right? Yes. He disciplines those he calls his children, because love is disciplining someone, because discipline is training. It's training you in the way that you ought to go. It's correcting you when you're wrong. But it's done out of, I want your betterment. I want your improvement. I want you to enjoy life more by not continuing in these paths that are only going to cause you heartbreak. And romanticizing away sins without calling them out, and staying with people who are unrepentant is only going to bring you heartbreak. I also thought of the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which isn't really a romantic comedy per se, but it definitely deals with relationships. Yeah. And they keep erasing their relationship and then keep getting back into the same toxic, screwed up relationship, because it's literally, they don't remember. Like, they're setting aside and blocking off the bad memories of what made that relationship not work. And that's like the epitome of romanticizing away those horrific character traits. There was a movie called Very Bad Things, which I don't know if you guys
I've never seen that one. No,
at all. It's a black comedy. And it had to do with the idea that, like, getting to the wedding was all that mattered. And it's one of those things where, like, they go on the debauched, not hen trip, whatever it be. The stag do, right? Yeah. The bachelor party to Vegas, and someone gets killed. And so then they hide it. And then everything just proceeds to unravel in ridiculous black comedy fashion. But at the end of the movie, there's this weird scene that I remember with Cameron Diaz, like, in her dress, out of her mind, dragging her now like disabled groom to the thing because she's like, I am getting married.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that married. Clip. It doesn't matter. And I remember that stuck in my head, that idea that like there are some women who are so obsessed with the wedding that they don't care who they marry.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this quote from Cher in Clueless, where she says, well, you see how picky I am about my shoes, and they only go on my feet.
Yeah.
And I thought, if we could only apply that to how we sometimes choose our romantic partners, if we would be just as picky about, does that shoe go with my outfit, in regards to, does this person compliment me? Will this person encourage me, help me grow, help me mature? Will they be the iron that sharpens my iron in how we pursue the Lord together? So those kinds of things are always fascinating to me as I watch some of these romantic comedies where I'm like, that's going to be a train wreck. That's not a good match. That's going to be a horrible train wreck. And it's all because we romanticize that idea, or we have that idea of it's that one person. And so if I get that lightning bolt, that has to be the only person for me. And it's tricky. And I believe that it's dangerous. You need wisdom. You need foresight. You need to actually understand that person that you plan on partnering with, what their worldview is. How do they deal with when hardship comes their way? How do they deal with teaching you as you're going to teach each other? Proverbs actually says plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So are you actually taking the time to get counsel and know more about this person before you commit yourself to them and to walking through life with them? And so then I think too, we often run into a problem of what I call catharsis versus catechism. And it's it might be a bit of a false dichotomy, but it's kind of that idea. Do we let the cathartic emotionality of these movies and stories define our worldview and our relationship goals? Or do we actually rest on the foundation of Scripture to define what we should be looking for in a partner, what we should be expecting from love, and how we can then go about building what can be the most beautiful relationship that two people can have? The marriage is supposed to reflect to the world the symbiotic unity of the Trinity, right? God the Father, Christ, he brings his bride to his son. They are united. They become one flesh, and they're supposed to, in that exercising of their roles, in how they mature and grow together, we're supposed to be reflecting that beautiful picture of the Trinity to the rest of the world. That relationship can be a magnificent witness. But if we allow just trite emotionality to be our foundation, or define what we expect from a relationship, then that witness gets hampered. Our happiness and holiness gets hampered. And honestly, I think too, like, catharsis without proper catechism subconsciously catechizes you. If you grow up watching these movies and that is your basis and understanding for what a relationship is supposed to be, what you should expect from your partner, what you should or shouldn't have to sacrifice for your partner, you are being catechized, which is a lot of what popcorn theology is kind of all about, right? That idea of watching the movies mindfully, sifting through the messages that they're telling us. So I see a lot of that subconscious understanding. I actually looked for I looked for some quotes today. I was trying to find, like, what are some quotes about love that you see in movies? And what I discovered was they don't come out right and say it.
No. Nope.
They don't come out right and go, you just
You can
stay
never
toxic,
say I love
sweetheart.
you.
Well, they
3
don't
words.
say that, but they're like, they won't come right out and be like, you just stay toxic and you keep true to yourself and do whatever you want to do. And if no one will bow to you, you keep going. You know, they won't say that out loud. And yet the way the relationships, they're absolutely pushing it. And so you have to be so mindful of how you're engaging these stories. Did you guys ever experience that in your lives? Did you have something like that kind of tweaked the way you felt about something, and you have hopefully recognized it and maybe started to rectify some of that? Or have you seen it in Friends?
I feel like I've definitely seen it in Friends. I feel like my parents were pretty great growing up. You know, they didn't, you know, there wasn't popcorn theology when my parents were growing up, but they always did a good job of like pointing out like bad things in movies, you know, like, hey, we don't do that. That's a bad way to go about a relationship. You know, we don't sleep with somebody before we marry them. That's a bad thing too. That's another thing that romantic comedies are always pushing, is like, you got to sleep with them to find out if you like them or not. Which is totally opposite of what you should do. So I feel like I had a pretty good upbringing in the fact that, I knew that like most of the things in rom-coms were pretty toxic, and maybe that's why they're not my favorite genre, to be honest, because I just recognize that, and I'm just like, I just don't feel like sifting through it. And again, that's like a choice you can make. It's not saying that you can't watch rom-coms, and obviously I do watch some rom-coms, and even rom-coms that have a toxic message sometimes, because The Wedding Planner is just one I grew up and I just really like Matthew McConaughey. So I'm gonna keep watching it. But it is a terrible message, and again, that's what we're all about, is like, you have to be able to sift through that. And you know, sometimes for me, it's, as a genre, I don't want to sift through it that much, just because that's my choice. So if that's your choice, that's fine, but just know, like you were saying, Kat, be very mindful when you're watching these types of movies, especially, I feel like.
Well, and they're very targeted. I mean, they are very targeted to young women and women in particular. And yeah, if you don't have a good foundation, it feels like very treacherous ground.
Yeah, I was thinking, so I was glad that you brought this up, Maddy, because I think with our audience on this podcast, it goes without saying that obviously the physical aspect of the relationship that rom-coms are so insistent on pushing on all of us is part of the toxic messaging. But I do think it's worth addressing that. You know, if we're going to talk about what Hollywood gets wrong when it comes to romantic comedies, there is so much of this idea that the foundation of the relationship is the physical. And again, if that's your starting point, what is your ending point? Because, you know, so we don't, you know, need to spend a whole lot of time going down that rabbit trail. But I think, you know, it's a distinction that just needs to be made, that the Christian worldview should obviously, that's an area of obvious separation for the Christian from the world. But yeah, I think, I'm so sorry. I just totally lost my train of thought. There was
Derailed. No survivors.
Yeah. I'll hop back in if it comes.
You can come back in. I was thinking too, like we've talked a lot about certain actors, right? And there's this idea that the script, I think it's something the cinema therapy guys have said a couple times, is like the script wants you to believe in it, and you do just because they're pretty.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
They have great chemistry. They're pretty people. They're really good actors, so they actually make it sound plausible.
Yes.
And yet I was reminded of 1 Samuel 16, where it says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart."
Yes.
And I think that's another huge piece of romantic comedies too, right? Oh, he's so pretty, or they're so smooth or cool or whatever, but what is the inward part of their character? And then, like you were saying, Bridgett, that idea of if if the physicality is your foundation, what
That
happens
goes
when
away.
that goes away?
Right.
Either through age or
Yeah.
through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
If that's your only foundation, then when that goes away, you have no basis for the relationship.
Right. And that's another area where it's so easy for the response to become, you're just not good enough for me anymore, too. If that is the basis for your relationship, you're not going to be the best in that area forever. Like there's going to be somebody,
Yeah.
So yeah. And that actually reminded me of what I wanted to say. So thank you, Kat, for that. It's reminding me of the scripture in Song of Solomon. I think I have it pulled up here. Chapter 8, verse 4, about not awakening love until it so desires, until it's ready. And I think that's part of what Hollywood gets wrong. It awakens love. It calls it love. That's not even love, but it awakens it in situations where it is not meant to be awoken. We stoke the physical fire when we have no right to do so. And I think I am so often reminded. I probably bring this up every single time on an episode. But Kat, you were talking about, like, are there moments of catechism in our own personal lives? And one that sticks out for me, like you, Maddy, I had parents who trained me well when I was young. So that was always part of our movie watching experience. But as an adult, a moment that stood out for me, I will never forget watching the video the first time, where R.C. Sproul is talking to his audience and actually ends up yelling at them.
Oh, what?
How dare you not know who God is and who you are? So this idea of who is God versus who I am as a human being, as his creation, I think can add so much understanding to this whole situation of what is love, what is romance. For the Christian, we must submit to God's will for love and his plan, his design, his definition of love, because he is God. So period. Like there is nothing else. We don't get to define love beyond the bounds that God has given us to define love. And so I think that is such an important element in all of this too. We can't awaken a love before it desires. And how do we know when it's ready? Well, are you walking with God? Are you seeking someone who is also walking with God? Because if you have that proper view of who he is versus who you are, then that will certainly help to align all of your other priorities too.
Yeah.
And that can help temper so much of the fire and the passion that does happen, because I've had those waves of affection. I've had crushes on people. I've had a hard time, getting over a breakup. I've had some very poor relationship choices in my life. That's for a whole nother
We're gonna dish on a new episode.
To some of that from personal experience, like things that I put up with that I shouldn't have put up with, things that I romanticized away, that I downplayed, sins of my own and sins of my partner that made life very difficult and have caused problems that you couldn't necessarily expect. And I think too, like you're saying, with knowing who God is and who we are, we can also have an understanding of what we expect from that relationship. Because I think too, we often expect the relationship to heal us. If we find the right person, they're going to help fix all of our problems. So even if we are looking in sort of the right direction, we might still be pointing at that person to do all of the work, rather than relying on the Holy Spirit or doing a lot of the heavy lifting with God, with the Holy Spirit to mend the issues within us, rather than expecting that partner to be the person that makes us feel safe, that makes us feel whole. That's an unrealistic expectation to put on that person, even the best person, right? Even a Wesley from Princess Bride, right? As You Wish. that's an unrealistic expectation to lay on someone like him. Even when you're saying, like, as good as it gets, where he says, you make me want to be a better man. That's a fabulous sentiment. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I want to grow and mature with you. But if I'm expecting you to drag me kicking and screaming toward that maturity alone,
Yeah.
then I'm going to burn you out.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think we can fall into that emotional catharsis of a romantic comedy. And I liked, just to quote them again, the Cinema Therapy guys, they mentioned the idea that part of why we like these movies is they offer us a good, clean ending sometimes, right? Like you get this, it ends, we'll joke that it ends before the hard work actually starts,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
it gives you this like, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
You don't
They put the
get
bow
that
on
in
top.
life,
Right.
right? We don't get
Yeah.
that. And part of why we then lambast these movies is because we're like, but that's not life. But there is an element of that sort of cathartic escapism that we desire in a story like this. We want that bow on top. We want to be like,
Yes.
they could just stay right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be beautiful. It'd be great. I'm just going to imagine them there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
never
Yep.
moving forward. Right.
Everything perfect.
Just as they were.
Yeah.
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 And so there is a place. I think there is a place for stories like that, right? As long as we understand and appreciate that that's what's happening, right? If you're having a hard time, and sometimes this movie is a comfort food, as long as you recognize that it's comfort food, it's not always a sin to indulge in that. But if it is the only thing that's catechizing your understanding of what love is, of what a relationship is, of what to expect from a partner that you want to walk through life with, therein is a problem. So like you were saying, Bridgett, the knowing who God is, knowing who you are, knowing what your purpose is to glorify him, to worship him, to obey his commandments, can we find someone who wants to do that with us,
Yeah.
right? With the appropriate potential for maturity. Again, you don't have to be, that person
All the
doesn't
way
have to
there,
be
yeah.
perfect when you find them. They're never going to be, right?
Nope.
But do they have the appropriate understanding to partner with you in walking through that? And that type of relationship can be incredibly fulfilling, incredibly rewarding, and safe, and loving, and so an absolute balm and salve to some of the hardships that you will face in this life. So the longing that we have for that is absolutely God-given.
Yeah.
And I remember in Say Anything, which could also go under the like grand romantic gesture that everyone knows about, right? Holding up the song, the beatbox. At one point, she comes back, like her whole world has fallen apart, and she comes back to him, and he says, "Are you here because you need someone, or because you need me?" And then he goes, "Forget it. I don't care." But it's a really profound question.
Yeah.
Right? Are you just grasping for someone to fill that hole, to fill that need, to try and fix something in you? Or is there a partner that is compatible with you, that you work well with? Again, conflict resolution, communication skills, shared worldview, shared understanding of what your purpose in this world is to move forward in. So that's what you're catechized in. And that's then what you're evaluating, what you're looking for through. So in light of that, and some of those things that we've talked about, after we've just sort of ripped up a whole bunch of romantic comedies, shown all these ways that they can be very detrimental, very quicksandy sort of things to walk through, what are some good ideas for you guys how do we navigate that repeated messaging. And are there any good rom-coms at all? Aside from Jane Austen, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. Chef's kiss of the romantic comedies. I mean, I think, again, there's definitely good ones. And again, I think it is a matter of like sifting through, what's good and what's bad. I can't think of like a single one that I feel like is like really perfectly good. You know what I mean? Like in a Christian sense, like there's no Christian romantic comedies. And also I have seen a Christian romantic comedy. It was terrible. What was it called? It was the one in Ireland that came out a couple years ago. It was like set in Ireland, and I don't remember the name of it. It was bad though. Most Christian movies are bad though, so it's just kind of part of that. But again, like I was just trying to think, I'm like, is there any movie that I could think of that actually had maybe a Christian couple or a Christian-esque couple who actually kind of had a sense of propriety and had that together? I'm having a real hard time. I'm not. Maybe Return to Me. Did they sleep together?
Nope.
Or did they wait? Okay.
They waited primarily because she was very, very self-conscious of her scar.
Yeah.
But her sister spoke to that as well, where she was like, don't shave your legs because shaving your legs might be the only thing that keeps you from
Yes, I do remember that line. Yes.
In that.
Yes. So like I
no,
could
they didn't
admire
actually.
that
And there were
bit.
actually some really sweet moments in that movie.
Yeah. So I guess that one. But yeah, I'm having a hard time thinking of like this is what, like love is, from like a Christian perspective. It's very hard to come up with something, at least in this genre.
Well, I would also say like part of why we keep seeing these things cycle through, right? A lot of the different comedies that we've talked about, the same messaging that comes up is partially because they're constantly being remade. I mean, James and I joke all the time that Hollywood isn't out of ideas. They never had any. They were cribbing from books and plays way back in the beginning. And so you'll see things like Romeo and Juliet. Okay, we're talking Shakespeare, right? Well, that's West Side Story is basically Romeo and Juliet. They just made it gangs and put some music in it, right? Warm Bodies, which was actually one of two Zom rom-coms. Yeah. Which, by the way, Shaun of the Dead is another fantastic romantic comedy. And I'd like to point out that he does actually mature and grow by the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But that's Romeo and Juliet. It's unabashed in the fact that it's Romeo and Juliet. There's even a balcony scene. Emma, right? We talked about Emma. Well, that Clueless is Emma. She's a busybody. She's trying to put her friends together. They even kept the same character names. Can you guys think of some other ones that are like that? I mean, there's quite a few. There's
I mean, Pride and Prejudice gets remade every couple years and different cultures and different
have you guys
different
seen
genres.
Bride and Prejudice?
I tried watching it and I didn't. Maybe I'm just not into Bollywood. I couldn't get into it. So
I loved it so much.
I need to go back and try to finish that one because I do know a lot of people are like, I love that one so much. So I need to give it a second chance. Maybe I was in a bad mood when I watched it.
It might just not be a great movie.
Yes, but it is Pride and Prejudice.
It is. Yeah, I do think between Shakespeare and Austen, like those are our love stories. That's what you have to pick from. You're remaking something Shakespeare did or something that Jane Austen did.
Yes, yeah.
That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much true.
I mean, you see Taming of the Shrew becomes Kiss Me Kate, becomes 10 Things I Hate About You. Much Ado About Nothing. Actually, did you guys see Anyone But You? It was a recent one with Julie.
I didn't see it, but I know about it. Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. Yeah,
Glenn Powell. Yep, right. It's Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay.
The Shop Around the Corner, which was an older movie, I think in the 40s, maybe.
Yep. Jimmy Stewart.
It was turned into a musical, She Loves Me, which became You've Got Mail. Pride and Prejudice is Bridget Jones's Diary is playing with some of the Pride and Prejudice themes, Mr. Darcy, that sort of thing. You have Cinderella, becomes Ever After, becomes Made in Manhattan. Cyrano de Bergerac was Roxanne with Steve Martin. So again, you can see like these things get recycled.
Yes.
As well as then just the cultural understanding. And then just a shout out to David, because I know he loves My Fair Lady. Like that's based on Pygmalion.
Yep.
Yep.
Which My Fair Lady becomes sort of Pretty Woman, becomes She's All That.
Yeah, right.
And so you see these things cycling all the time. So in that sense, again, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So we're constantly being bombarded with these ideals, and we're constantly then having to sift and navigate those ideals. And I just think it's really important as we look toward romance and potential partners to remember Galatians 5 talking about the fruits of the Spirit, because I think too, just focusing on some of what do you see in this person's character, how they treat other people, how they treat you, how they treat their families, if it's one of those big family movies, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That feels like a big one with romantic comedies.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking that. I'm like, oh, they never get that one right. No self-control.
Yeah.
So it's intriguing. And then I think too, in a reject, receive, redeem kind of way, are there some that, like some of your favorites, are there things that you're like, I really like this movie, but, or is there one where you're like, I hate this movie, but?
Yeah, for me, I mean, definitely. I think the romantic comedy genre is part of what makes it so interesting. And it's so funny. Like, here we are, these three women talking about these movies, and we were discussing beforehand how, like, none of us seeks out romantic comedy watch. We're all like, we hate this genre. But they are so great for analyzing, for all the reasons that both of you have just been saying, because as Christians, we know that any depiction of a romantic relationship is the coming together of two sinners. So what do we do with that? And I think because of that, even from a worldly perspective, there is so much that the world gets completely wrong about love and about its messaging about love. But what they can't get wrong is that it is bringing two sinners together. So there's always inherently going to be something for the Christian to parse through and to try to have to have discernment about when you watch a movie in this genre. Because I think as Christians, what we sometimes can be guilty of ourselves is idolizing love, making an idol of marriage and relationship and wanting it in place of a relationship with God. Yeah. So I think we have to guard against that. And it's a genre that demands discernment and spiritual maturity. And so for that, I think it can be a good thing to check them out sometimes and see what's going on. But to your specific question, Kat, I feel like every single romantic comedy that I actually enjoy would have a yeah, but.
Yep.
And everyone, I would be willing to say the messaging is terrible, but I actually really like watching the movie. So, for example, I'll give one example. We've already brought up Romeo and Juliet, and Romeo and Juliet is not a comedy, but it's a text. I think it illustrates this point really well. I have taught Romeo and Juliet for 6 years to high school freshmen. As a piece of literature, I think it is absolutely stunning and brilliant and beautiful. And like there are lines that I read that Shakespeare wrote in Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, oh my goodness, to have like 1 ounce of that writing talent. Like it's just an absolutely gorgeous piece of literature. And the story is terrible. Like there's just no way around it. It is it's awful. And I love actually talking with my students once they piece together what is going on and where the story is headed. They're like, wait a second, are you telling me that this is how this story ends? And they're incensed by it. And I love that. It is so unhealthy and just absolutely terrible morality, but it's wrapped in this gorgeous prose. So that's, one example where you can't let yourself be wowed by the artistry without going through and sifting for meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It's hard to, as a Christian, just accept one of these. Again, there's a lot of yeah buts. So instead of talking about one that I like, maybe I'll just talk about one that I absolutely despise. And again, it was one of those ones where I have heard about this movie for years and years. It's like one of the most it's always on the list of like one of the best romantic comedies out there, and it's Four Weddings and a Funeral. And that is just a terrible movie with a very toxic relationship in it. Like, I can't even believe I finished the movie. I think I was so flabbergasted that like this is people's favorite rom-com that I was like, I gotta see this to the end. Like, maybe it changes, maybe something magical happens. No, it's just they just accept that they're terrible people pretty much. So I will say maybe reject that one. I have a hard time finding anything to redeem in that particular one. Whereas with a lot of the other ones that I like, like with My Big Fat Greek Wedding and all that, it's like I can ignore a lot of that and just go with it. Crazy Rich Asians, like obviously they're sleeping together before they're married, and it's like I'll just ignore that because I like them. But it's not a good thing. Like, I know that that's not a good thing. I'm not accepting it in the sense that I would actually do that. And I think that's important, is like when you're watching these, is to know that like, yeah, you might be enjoying watching these people do these things, or even some of the crazy situations that they get into, but knowing that you should never do that. Like, you should never lie about something, even if it's a funny situation trying to get out of something, and you should never do that before you're married, obviously. And just know like where you're drawing the lines when you watch this. Again, just be very mindful that you're not starting to accept that behavior by you watching it constantly, but knowing that every time you watch it, you just kind of mentally point, either physically pointing out, because that's the thing, like when we were growing up, if there was something, like if somebody said something that was a lie about religion or something, a lot of times my dad would be like, out loud, like, that was wrong, and here I'm gonna tell you why, or even bad behavior, like, oh, like, we know we would never do that, right? So even if you're just mentally doing that, like, oh, they did a bad, just keep that, I think that's a good way of watching movies in general, just to keep that in the back of your mind, to remind yourself of, nope, don't do that.
Well, and I think too, it can be that idea of God's grace to us is so magnificent and generous in how he has rescued us from our sin and brought us into his family. But I think sometimes we can prevail upon that grace. And I think with these types of movies in romance, we can sort of excuse things by saying, oh, like, it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of movies seem to fall very much into that trope. Like, okay, they lied, they whatever, but they stopped doing it here and everything worked out in the end. And so therefore it's all okay. And it's kind of that wish for your kids where you're kind of like, learn from my mistakes, right? Don't go through this pain that I've gone through. Learn vicariously through my mistakes. So in that sense too, like watching these movies, learn vicariously, right? Watch the drama and the chaos that shows up because of these behavioral patterns. Yes, God can wring gold and beauty out of tragic, horrible situations, but wouldn't it be nicer if you didn't have to go through the tragic, horrible situation to get there, right? And that's kind of what I feel like I'm advocating for when I'm saying be wary of the romantic comedy. And I think a good indication of, or a good example of that might be a movie called The Notebook.
Oh yeah,
right, which everyone talks about. I know it was a huge. It kind of became a huge hit Again, very pretty people making some very reprehensible behavior look amazing. But I will say, like, it starts badly. There's a lot of coercion and manipulation. He practically threatens suicide. That is not a romantic gesture to try and get someone to go out with you. That is not a healthy foundation for a relationship, just so we're clear. You know, there's even that idea of like, just tell me what you want me to be and I will change everything about myself to be that so that I can have you.
Yes.
And that also is not a healthy place for a relationship to start. Rather than finding someone who's compatible with where you are now and who is willing to grow and mature with, as we've said before. Yet, at the end of that movie, there is the sweetest picture of long-suffering married life that I think is quite stunning. And I think maybe that's part of why I think it is one of those things where people are like, the ending is so beautiful that we are willing to forgive
justifies the bad behavior.
So I don't want to say that it justifies the bad behavior, but in that sort of reject redeem, here's a movie where we can absolutely reject the way the relationship started and how they went about things. But he has a quote where he says, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard. And we're going to have to work at this every day. But I want to do that because I want you. I want all of you forever, you and me, every day. And then what the movie shows us is that they had a married life together. They married, they had kids, and she has now developed dementia and she's forgetting that life that they had together. And what he does is he comes to her every day in the state that she's in, and he reads her their story. And as she wrote it down, she wrote it in the notebook. So it was what she had written about their life, and he came to her every day and read her that story. And there's this, I'm going to cry. There's this super poignant moment at the end when she becomes lucid for a moment, and she's like, like, I know who you are. And she asks him, how much time do we have? And he's like, not much, like maybe 5 minutes before she forgets him again. But that endurance of his love at that point is something that can be absolutely lauded. And I think that's the feeling people are chasing with these romance movies. That's what we've been talking about. That's that catharsis that it provides. It's that, I want to be loved like that. Right. And that's what we would advocate for. That's what we believe. That's the kind of love God has for us. And that's the kind of love that can be cultivated in those romantic relationships, as long as you are cautious, careful, dedicated to command yourself, to control your love, to show those fruits of the Spirit as the Holy Spirit helps and guides you. Some of these things are absolutely possible in that. So I don't want to end the romantic comedy Valentine's Day episode on a huge downer. I want to say that those things are possible in a mature Christian relationship with someone else who wants to be conformed to the Holy Spirit and will walk and mature with you through life. So please continue to watch movies, engage movies, but with a mindful understanding. As we always say at Popcorn Theology, you are not a mindless consumer. Happy Valentine's Day.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.